From the moment the alarms began screaming through the dim corridors of the USS Meridian, Lieutenant Aria Dawson felt the familiar knot of fear tighten in her chest, the same knot she had learned to hide behind a calm expression and a clipped, steady voice. The senior officers rushed past her without so much as a glance, their boots thundering against the steel floor as red lights pulsed overhead like a beating heart. Somewhere deep in the Atlantic, beneath thousands of feet of unbroken darkness, something had surfaced on the edge of their sonar before vanishing again in a way that made even seasoned veterans uneasy. Aria stood frozen for a beat, absorbing the tension, the adrenaline, the weight of knowing she was the only one on board who believed the anomaly was not a glitch, not a stray echo, not an equipment malfunction, but the return of a submarine the world had declared impossible. Aria had not always been doubted. She had been raised by a father who believed discipline could substitute for affection, and by the time she graduated from the Naval Academy, she had learned to bury softness under grit, intuition under logic, and fear under determination. Yet the crew of the Meridian, mostly older men with enough sea time to last several lifetimes, treated her not with hostility but with dismissive amusement, as though she were a bright student stuck in the wrong classroom. The commander's patience with her theories had run thinner with each passing day, and even though she had memorized every system, every schematic, every shift in sonar frequency, she found herself shrinking in the company of those who believed the ocean had nothing left to surprise them. But Aria knew otherwise. She had spent months studying classified patterns of a submarine rumored to be a ghost, an experimental vessel built by a rival nation and lost years before, a machine said to move so silently it became invisible to tracking systems. Most dismissed it as military folklore, a myth told in hushed tones during overnight watches. But Aria had seen something in the data, something the others overlooked, and today, in the wake of the alarm that shattered their routine, she felt the truth push against the silence she had endured for so long. The challenge before her was not merely the anomaly itself but the cold skepticism she faced inside the very walls that were supposed to function as a unified team. She felt the stares of crew members when she stepped into the sonar room, their expressions tinged with annoyance as though she were intruding upon a conversation she had not been invited to. The screens glowed with soft green light, lines of data scrolling like cryptic messages written by the sea itself. The senior sonar technician rubbed his forehead, muttering that they must be dealing with a faulty relay again. But Aria saw the brief spike in the signal, sharp, unnaturally clean, and then gone. Something had been there. Something built to disappear. As the technician turned back to his work, brushing off her presence, Aria felt the familiar frustration settle deep inside, but she steadied herself, leaning closer, breathing slowly, reminding herself that truth does not bend simply because others refuse to see it. Over the next several days, the tension aboard the Meridian grew like a storm cloud. They continued their mission, checking intelligence reports, monitoring surface movements, running drills, all while an invisible threat drifted somewhere beneath them. Aria studied every piece of data she could access, sometimes staying up long after her shift ended, her eyes burning with sleepless determination. The more she examined the sonar signatures, the more convinced she became that the anomaly belonged to the lost submarine known only in rumor as Spectre 01, a vessel designed with revolutionary magnetic dampening systems said to disrupt conventional sonar tracking. Aria traced patterns on scraps of paper, calculating angles, estimating depth profiles, finding correlations in signals that others dismissed as random noise. She whispered to herself in the dim light of the navigation bay, telling the ocean she knew its secret, even if no one else did. Days passed. The crew grew restless. The commander grew irritated. And Aria, carrying the weight of her own certainty, decided she needed to do what no one else was willing to attempt, follow the anomaly's trajectory manually, mapping its movement across the deep trenches and undersea ridges. She felt the exhaustion thickening in her limbs, felt doubt creeping into her thoughts during the rare moments she allowed herself to rest. She thought of her father, the stoic, demanding man who taught her that failure was a stain one never washed away. She thought of the instructors who told her she was smart but not experienced, capable but not seasoned enough to lead, intuitive but not authoritative enough to be trusted. She wondered if she had misinterpreted the signals, if she had allowed her desire to prove herself to overshadow logic. But each time she returned to the data, that same unmistakable pattern resurfaced, fleeting yet certain, whispering for her to keep going. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. She was sitting alone in the sonar room during an early morning watch, the ship eerily quiet as most of the crew slept, when she noticed the faintest distortion in the frequency bands, a ripple too smooth to be natural. She leaned closer, adjusted the filters, and the screen revealed a brief shimmer, like a shadow moving across moonlit water. Her heart pounded so fiercely she felt it in her throat. She marked the coordinates, cross-referenced the surrounding thermal layers, then realized the signature had reappeared at the edge of the Meridian's blind zone, a place where ocean currents created natural interference. If a submarine wanted to remain hidden, that was where it would go. Something inside her surged, a feeling that this was the moment she had been chasing for months. And without waiting for the others to dismiss her again, she went straight to the commander. The commander's initial frustration was palpable, but Aria spoke with a steadiness that surprised even herself. She didn't plead. She didn't argue. She simply presented the facts, the trajectory, the thermal layer behavior, the frequency distortion, and the blind zone correlations. She explained how the signature had been masking itself by riding the currents. And for the first time since she had boarded the Meridian, the commander looked at her not as a young officer trying to validate herself, but as someone who had uncovered something that none of them were prepared for. After a long, heavy silence, he ordered the crew to follow the course she suggested. As they navigated into the quiet corridor of shifting currents, the Meridian became a different ship. The crew, once dismissive, now whispered among themselves as the data screens flickered with increasing anomalies. Aria stood near the central console, muscles tense, eyes fixed on the sonar. She could sense the doubt still lingering in the minds of those around her, but it no longer had the power to shrink her. Each passing minute deepened the suspense. The ocean was unnervingly still outside, as though holding its breath. Then, without warning, the sonar blipped. Once. Twice. Clearer. Stronger. There was something massive moving just beyond their detection threshold. The sonar technician, who had brushed her off countless times, leaned forward, adjusting the filters Aria had recommended days earlier. The shape began to appear in fragments, like a ghost assembling itself from the dark. A long, narrow hull. Curvature consistent with a stealth design. And then, unmistakably, the markings of a vessel long believed lost. Spectre 01. The crew fell silent, the reality of what they were seeing sinking into them like cold water. Aria felt a wave of awe and vindication wash over her, but beneath it all was something deeper, a sense of responsibility. This wasn't just about proving she had been right. This was about understanding the intentions of a vessel powerful enough to evade global detection systems. Why was Spectre 01 resurfacing now? What mission was it on? And why had it risked revealing even a fragment of its presence? The Meridian maintained distance, tracking the submarine cautiously. As they followed, it became clear that the vessel wasn't moving in an attack pattern. Instead, it drifted as though damaged or in distress. Aria, watching the behavior closely, recognized irregular shifts in propulsion signatures. The submarine was struggling. Perhaps its stealth systems had malfunctioned. Perhaps its crew had lost control. Or perhaps something far more dangerous was occurring inside. An emergency decision had to be made: pursue and monitor, or attempt to intervene. The commander turned to Aria, not out of formality but with genuine weight behind his gaze. Her analysis, her instinct, her persistence, it had brought them here. And now, her insight would determine what happened next. She studied the patterns, the lingering heat plume, the intermittent electrical pulses. Her conclusion was unsettling. The submarine was not only unstable, it was on a slow descent toward crushing depths. If it continued, it would implode, taking with it whatever intelligence, whatever technology, whatever crew remained on board. Aria recommended they intercept before it crossed the critical line.